Welcome to the Jesus Over Everything podcast, connecting the power of God's Word to everyday life.
Welcome to the Jesus Over Everything podcast. I am here for a Mother's Day special interview with the one and only, my mother, Claudia Doran. Mom, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm well. And you?
I'm great. Thank you for taking the leap of faith to do this. Actually, it was pretty easy to get her on here because I thought I was going to have to persuade and twist your arm, and it was only a text. So
That's good.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself as, how would you introduce yourself to people who might not be familiar with you beyond David's mom?
I usually say, I'm Claudia Doran. I'm a homemaker. That's what I say.
There you go.
Then I always stammer and go, but my kids are all grown, so I don't really know what I do.
Well, you're still, your home is made.
Yes,
yeah?
The home is made. Mm-hmm.
It still has a lot to do. Weren't you gardening this morning?
I was. Yes.
Okay, so tell people what you were putting in today.
Dahlias.
And where were you putting in dahlias?
All along the fence line by my house to the neighbors.
And how much of your homemaking time is gardening?
In the summer, it's probably 10 hours a week because I enjoy it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite thing about gardening?
The solitude.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful. You're in God's creation. I love it.
That is a place that is interesting, Mom, that I think you and Dad tend to both be a little more introverted than I am.
A little, yeah.
Well, I don't know how that happened then.
I don't either. Yeah.
I guess I tend to think that dispositionally, I'm more like you than Dad. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think so.
But you're not an extrovert. Would you say you're an extrovert?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. What is an extrovert to you?
Somebody who loves being with other people.
You don't love being with other people?
This is awkward.
No, you're allowed to say it.
I don't thrive on it. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. You thrive on it.
Yeah.
I don't thrive on it. I do it, and I do enjoy it, but it is a struggle bus for me.
So it tires you out to go be with people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is interesting because, well, later on we'll talk about it, but I feel like we still hosted people a relatively a decent amount.
Oh, yeah.
So you do a good job of hosting and welcoming groups in, but like throwing a party like that is not something that's like what you're looking forward to? No,
I love that part. I just think I struggle with the people part.
What do you mean by that?
It's just, I don't feel like I'm a conversationalist. If I have somebody who's a strong, like if you're there or Dad's there and they can carry the conversation, I feel okay. But if it's not a strong conversationalist in the group, then I'm really uncomfortable.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't like talking to stupid people either. So that's okay. And I know that's what you're thinking. So there are the tally sides of us where I did get some of that, right?
Yeah.
But before we get into learning more about all these different things, and I'll be nice. But I've asked some people I've interviewed to kind of help people get to know them by telling the chapter headings of your life. So yes. I thought you had a great answer, but I asked for subtitles. So tell us what the chapter headings of your life are, times of your life, and then a label so that we can kind of hear your biography in a snapshot.
Okay, so I would say from 0 to 29, I would call myself a hot mess. And that was basically you're coming to Christ, you're wrestling with life, you're struggling through, what do I believe? Obviously for me, I came to Christ by then. And then struggling with sin and battling it. And then, in those days, I was learning to be a wife, learning to be a mother, trying to learn to be a mother.
Yeah.
All those things. So that's what, a hot mess was that. 30 to 45, I put, I'm still a mess. But that was more maturing in my faith, maturing in, okay, what is my responsibility as a wife and mother? And then from the next stage was 45 to 60. I said, I'm still messy. And I think for that one was where I came, to really understand my true responsibility as a Titus II woman.
Mm-hmm.
I had Titus II responsibilities before that as a younger woman. Now I was supposed to be stepping into the older woman category. and really growing in that understanding, and then trying to discipline myself to be purposeful about being an older woman. Even though I don't think at 45 you're an older woman, I just think that I should be growing toward that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was like, okay, when I say I'm still messy, that's where the rub of you're the same person that you were. All those struggles you have when you're young, you still have them later because you're a sinner.
Yeah.
And you have to struggle through that. So you still have to keep fighting the flesh. And James talks about, that we are drawn away by our own temptations and lusts.
Yeah.
And so that's where I look at it and go, but I want to keep pressing on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have you do it a little closer.
Okay.
There's
Yeah,
good.
no
You're
worries.
doing great. But
Yep.
So when you pick those dates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm
yeah,
60.
was there any, you're 60 as
Mhm.
of like a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
So happy birthday again. But what is the reason that 29 was the turning point you selected?
I think 29 because I had my last baby then.
Okay. Derek was
And-
born in 20.
Yeah, at 29. So, you're kind of like you've come into that realm. And I know that from like 30 to 45, there was some purposeful understanding of, wow, I've got a heavy responsibility here of what I'm supposed to be doing. We had, survived Dad's doctorate, done those things that were hard.
Yeah.
And, like I kind of felt like I maybe was in survival mode until then.
Until 30.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, before we leave the turn of 29 just tell people where you grew up, where you went to high school, what your family arrangement was.
Okay, so my parents were believers. I went to Lincoln Park High School, small Bible church. I was saved when I was 5, but I was a rebel teen and gave my parents a run for their money. And then really about 16 and a half was when I had a really moment where I remember vividly that it was a confrontation about something that I had gotten in trouble for. And my dad said, "You have a spiritual problem." And I was so angry with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the Lord just kept going, "Look, you cannot lead a double life.
Yeah.
You can't be a Sunday-only Christian."
Yeah.
And so it was really a turning point.
Yeah. And so you were about a sophomore or junior in high school?
Yeah.
And did you finish strong then at Lincoln Park High School, or did you have struggles? Okay,
No, I still struggled. You have these sin patterns and like you have your friends that you enjoy and want to hang out with, but yet the Lord's convicting you. And
Yeah.
that's where I kept having the conviction grow stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And that's how eventually I ended up going to inner city after I graduated.
Right.
I knew of this church because my younger brother went to the school.
Right. So your younger brother goes to the school and you decided to take him, is it what I remember being told?
It was basically, I was going to go there and my church was really small. There was really no teens. And so Mitch was like, "I want to go there too."
Yeah.
So he came with me.
And how old are you?
I was 18 at the time. 'Cause I turned 19 right after I came.
But you were out of high school
Mhm.
at Lincoln Park?
Yeah. I had just almost finished business school.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
And Papa and Grandma, how did that go to say that you want to go to a different church than Dearborn Bible?
Oh, they were thrilled
Oh, really?
because any spiritual life, I think they were like, "Oh, we've been praying for this."
Yeah. So they were just excited to see you say, "Okay, I want to go on my
Yeah,
own."
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And that's where you met Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got married when you were 19 too, or no?
I did. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had our first date in April and then got married the next February.
February of 85.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. 40 years.
40 years.
That's awesome. So then from so you've been married for 10 years by the time you're still in your hot mess label.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Why do you say that?
Why would I say I was still in the hot mess?
Yeah, I
think
telling
it
you,
really,
there's a lot of our churches below the 30 line.
right.
So it'd
So-
probably be encouraging for them to hear.
Yeah, I think because honestly, a lot of it was not really knowing, like you have an idea of what life will be, and then it's probably not going to be what you had in your head. And so then struggling with dissatisfaction or frustration or exhaustion, some of it just when, like I say, surviving Dad's doctorate, that, I always joke about we had David, Daniel, a doctorate, Dylan, and Derek.
Right.
And the doctorate was the biggest, ugliest baby ever.
That was harder?
It was way harder.
What was the hardest part about it?
The amount of time it took for Dad. And then, he was pastoring the church. And I know you're working on your doctorate, so that's why I'm like always sympathetic to that.
Well, I probably just do worse work than he does.
I don't know.
Because so far it hasn't been crazy. But
That's great.
One of the beauties is online
Right.
education.
They didn't have that then.
You had
right.
to travel there, right?
Right. We had to travel. We used to take you
Yeah,
guys.
the other Chicago
The
are
other
some
Chicago.
great memories for me. Which,
Right.
for people listening, the other Chicago is just whatever I remember of when we would go to where my dad was doing his doctorate. There was this place we would stay, and then there were these water slides where you could slide down on a mat. So Dad was going through his doctorate when I was 4.
Yeah.
4 or 5
4 or
years
5,
old,
yeah.
6 years old. And I loved to go visit him in the other Chicago. So it was a horribly hard time for you, but it was real. Honestly, I just thought the other Chicago was like better than Disneyland.
Right. And then when you say horribly bad time, put that in American perspective.
Yeah.
All my conveniences, all my wah, wah, wah.
Right. People are going to hear this and they're going to know that I was raised by you then. Because I'm not a very good counselor.
Quit sucking your thumb. Let's go.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So, but you felt, what would you say the main pressures were on you as now? Because I'm fascinated by I know you well, but not that well. To go from at 18, let's say your parents are going, wow, thank God for a sign of life, to 19, you're the pastor's wife.
Right.
So how was that whiplash?
I think because most people didn't know, I had just come from being
Lincoln Park High School?
Lincoln Park High and
prom queen? Were you the prom queen?
No, I was not.
Okay. They didn't let stoners be the prom queen.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
No. So when I look back on it, I go, wow, is God good and gracious and kind?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way that should have worked out.
Right.
Like you write it down on paper and you go, oh, that was a big mistake.
Not the plan you kind of want to make.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
But God was good.
Yeah. So you get married at 19, and then that isn't exactly when Dad became the head pastor at Inner City.
He was a youth pastor already.
Okay.
And
which is different, yeah.
Right. And then we really 6 months later he was out at First Baptist of Troy. So I hope this isn't the wrong thing to say.
Yeah, talk.
So I went from hot pants and tube tops to culottes in literally 12 months.
And nobody's going to know what culottes are in our church. But you went from, I always laugh because Dad would joke around about getting a zebra bikini as one of your last purchases before you guys got married or something. And then the conservative fundamentals background that some of us are familiar with, which I think only a segment of our church will understand that. Mm-hmm. But I think they probably all know Pentecostals or something. It's not like there's somebody with a lot of those rules and you jumped into a place where, you couldn't see your kneecaps, right? Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how was that for you?
Honestly, it wasn't bad because it was like, okay, that's the rule. Let's just go with it.
Okay, so you didn't have. I'm actually shocked at that because I
had
don't know
problem.
that. So where did I inherit this?
Well,
that's the rule. Let me break it.
Other
than
true
from
me.
Adam.
So I don't think I had a problem, but I do know that when we came back to Inner City, one of the girls in the youth group said, "Well, have you burned your culottes yet? Because you always said when you went somewhere else you were going to have your jeans back."
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, I never said that.
Yeah.
But I probably gave that impression.
Yeah.
So I was kind of disappointed that had come through because I didn't ever really fight it. Because it was just that's what it was.
It was the rules.
Yeah. So who cares?
So it wasn't a super jarring thing to have that culture shock.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. Well, I'm sure I probably did get irritated sometimes, but whatever,
But then surely there were other challenges. I mean, we're both thankful for First of Troy, both thankful for Inner City, all those things.
Absolutely.
But what were the challenges of going even at the level of, okay, you're kind of being welcomed into a place where people perceive you as a leader, and you're 20?
Not right.
Okay, so what was that like?
I'll give you the first time I was just hosted Seminary Wives last night for the salad buffet. So they're there, and I remember vividly going to one of those, and I am just married and going, what in the world? I do not fit in here.
Yeah.
These girls have all gone to Bible college. They've all gone to Christian schools, and I am just out of high school and don't even know what I'm doing.
Right.
So there was that perception of, oh, you're a seminary student's wife. You know all the things that are right and wrong, and you know God's word, which is foolish of even to think that of somebody who's gone to Bible college,
Right.
right? Because you've had basic training, but
Yeah.
you don't really, and you haven't grown, and you haven't had the hard things of life to
You
really
gotta have some birthdays. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you really know the word of God? Have you lived it
Yeah.
through those hards?
Right. Right.
So
No, that's good because I mean, and actually that was really influential in Abby. I mean, I don't know if you saw the one we did, but it was
yeah.
she was very like, I don't want to be a pastor's wife because she's normal.
Right.
And then, I was like, well, I don't think that it has to be the way maybe you experience, which is some of that, which
Right.
thankfully you were not in those categories because you didn't go to Bible college. I mean, I think I told you that, but somebody had pulled me aside and said like, oh, I don't know about marrying Abby Walker because she's not she doesn't play the piano and all this, the Bible
Right.
college pastor's wife thing.
Right.
Thankfully, I was like, well,
Neither does my mom.
Yeah. My mom only knows how to beat you. She can't beat a drum, I'm just kidding, but that's
True.
So you were feeling that. Well, how did you how did you get through that? What did you think when you started to, because it could be easy to play a game. Like,
Right,
okay,
right.
everybody's got their stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
I know how I'll be a pastor's wife. Well, I'll just put on a face at Seminary Wives. Or did you, how
No.
did you face it?
I just tried to look at the ones that were there that, were older. So at that time, Daisy McCune, she was a gracious, godly woman that just loved people.
Yeah.
She would be the extrovert's extrovert, right?
Yeah.
Always wanting to talk to people. So I knew I couldn't be that, but I could learn from her.
Yeah.
And so I just tried to keep watching and learning from those that I could.
Yeah. And so who were some of those names besides Daisy?
Mary Compton,
Okay.
fabulous example of
Yeah.
godliness, faithfulness.
Yep. Yeah. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
So, and did you already know Mrs. Towns as well at that time?
So Mrs. Towns, I knew her a little bit because she, was the elementary principal and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So got to know her a little bit, not through seminary days, but then afterward when Dave became the pastor.
Yeah.
Then, she was there, and obviously she was older than me and much more educated, and she was doing all kinds of things. She'd been on the mission field. So I just watched her like a hawk. I mean, like a stalker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did she know that? Or did you say, hey, I want...
No, I didn't
Because
say
we
it.
have, I don't know if you have this now, but there's a lot of, I think there's actually something good about it because what you're saying is admirable, but there's something the younger generation now is sometimes saying out loud, I want you to mentor me.
Yes.
So-
I've had that done to me,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I just think sometimes it almost limits you to the one
Yeah.
rather than, because
Yeah.
even though I would put Mrs. Towns on a pedestal,
Yeah.
she was human.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the place where I think for me, it was just good to observe and to watch how she responded to her husband. Things like silly things that I would have never asked your dad about permission for.
Yeah.
And she would say, well, I have to ask the boss.
Mhm.
And I just I was like, oh, I never even dreamed, just because I'm kind of like, meh.
Yeah. Yeah. But the way that they worked out, she's following the leadership in her home.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you started to observe a number of ladies and you're still, let's say 20. So when did you come back to inner city?
I was 23.
23.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still also at the same time watching and learning like a hawk from those ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And the names that come to mind for you are Daisy, Mrs. Compton, Mary Compton,
And Mrs. Towns.
Mrs. Towns. Anybody else in that?
Not that I can think of right now, but
Okay.
maybe
Well,
somebody will
since
pop up.
I don't want to spend a ton of time on them, but I would love to just off the top of your head. What's something that stands out as far as learning from each of them? I learned this from Daisy. I learned this from Mary.
Okay.
I learned this from Marion.
Daisy, I probably learned true hospitality.
Okay.
Is just the graciousness of making somebody welcome, asking questions about them,
Yeah.
and just trying to be interested.
Yeah.
I think that would be her. With Mary, I learned how to be more like proper.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't coming in. It's not like I was awful or anything, but just, like maybe presence in a way.
Yeah.
I don't think I can ever have her posture. It made me sit up a little straight when you said her name.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just an example of faithfulness and the way she could communicate when she would speak. She spoke on, learning how to public speak.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful for me because, I had no training in that.
No, that's great. No, I think that's really, and that's easy to misunderstand, but Titus, I believe it's Titus, talks about the older men being the kind of men that raise the eyes and aspirations of younger men.
Right.
And I think about Dr. Compton and Mrs. Compton as both people who are very gracious and not lording themselves over you.
Right.
But when you encounter them, you go, oh, I would like to aspire to be better in the ways that they are serving.
Right. Right.
And that is, I understand what you mean. I think it's a biblical category that you go, oh yeah,
Right.
Dr. Compton was great. Did I ever tell you, nobody has ever made me feel smaller it was a good thing. But like I was late and I lived 5 blocks from the seminary and he late for a class and he said, traffic on Keppen, Mr. Doran, and I just wanted to melt into the floor because it was obvious I was not late because of traffic.
Right.
I was just being lazy, but
right.
Yeah, he's great. I'm so thankful for them.
Yeah.
So, okay, then what about Marion?
Marion would probably be just general spirit of godliness. And I truly mean I watched her interact about so many things. I can remember one time vividly, we had this brainstorm idea of, like this great thing we were going to do as ladies' part. And she was like, all right, ladies, that sounds great. And then probably 5 years later, I found out that the church had done something almost identical to that when, probably in, 40 years before.
Yeah.
And it was funny because she never let on, oh, we've already done that.
Yeah.
We've been down this road. Oh, it'll be good or it'll be bad.
Yeah.
It was like the humility of we can always try better. We can always be doing more. And I love that about her.
That's sweet. That's great. Now, it may not be the time to talk about this, but I actually, so my life, our lives, but my life has been deeply impacted by the kind of background non-ministry life of we always had family get-togethers. We always, so Grandma Sanders and Grandma Tally both had obviously profound impact on our lives. So is there something that Grandma Sanders, you would say, taught you?
Well, she taught me a lot of stuff just because I was the only granddaughter. So she taught me a lot of just life skills.
Yeah.
All the baking and cooking was with Grandma Sanders.
Yeah.
She taught me to sew, things like that. She taught me about sacrificial giving. I think that's a part of, like truly when I go, I need to try to have the kids over. I'm like, oh my word, that's so much work, and I'm not complaining. I'm just, when you start thinking, wow, she was doing that forever.
She was old.
Right.
Yeah.
And she did it until she was very old. I mean, I lift up the one hand she used to use and I'm like, I don't know how she lifted that.
Right. And there's a way, obviously, like, I mean, my memories of her, she loved the Lord but wasn't like a very, let's have a bunch of conversations about the Bible.
No.
But it's amazing how when somebody, the energy it takes to create that space where everyone got together was a massive act of service that didn't have to be the upfront, let me teach the Bible study, but she really served our family to have
she did serve our
a
family.
Steady rhythm of getting together that you notice it when somebody doesn't take up the work of hospitality.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like
for sure.
When you have to be the host or whatever.
Right.
Now, and then you and your mom tell people about, obviously Grandma Tally passed recently, so there's wonderful memories, but hot mess includes a relationship with her that sometimes could be that way, right?
Right. Yeah. We definitely had a hot mess relationship. And that's why I was afraid to have girls.
Yeah. So, there's ladies in the church that probably love their moms, and there's others that love their moms but have a hard relationship with them.
Right. Right. And I would look back on it and go, it was probably just immaturity and probably on both our parts. Like, even you and I, some of our struggles when you were growing up was my immaturity and you're growing to maturity.
Well,
so
I think it was my immaturity mostly, but yes.
But it's part of it too with my mom and I. And I remember when my dad died, my mom's on one side of the bed, I'm on the other, and I was like, oh no, this is how we're gonna bond.
Yeah.
And it really kind of was.
Yeah. It brought you
Because
together.
my dad was gone and I had to like grow up. I couldn't be my obnoxious self with her.
Yeah. But then, and so was that a part of also what you're experiencing as a hot mess, or no, like, was that kind of more growing up, and then 23 on, it was more?
No, she and I were always at each other. So
Yeah.
I don't, which I hate, I don't want to disparage my mom because it's not her fault.
I think
mine.
but I think both of us would say, Grandma Tally, I mean, did you cry when you sang He Arose on Sunday? Or?
I did.
Yeah. It's like,
oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously she was a wonderfully faithful.
Oh, I
and
loved
grandma.
her. Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it's actually helpful. Remember, the fly on the wall of this podcast is like, nobody's going to take time on a Sunday morning behind a pulpit to talk this way about real discipleship.
Right.
I watched you very, very aggressively and joyfully over a long time love Grandma.
Yeah.
And she's wonderful. So nobody has
no, right.
But,
nobody could ever believe that we didn't have a good relationship. That's why it was.
And you would say you didn't have a good relationship? You feel like that way?
Yeah, I don't think we did until.
Okay.
Because
I mean,
until the kids got older.
We fought pretty profoundly when I was growing up, but I feel like we have a good relationship.
Oh, I mean, I do too. Yeah.
Which is funny because I think
it is funny.
I mean, I told Abby, I was like, well, I don't know if you understand how hot gets until you had seen Mom raising me as a stubborn teenager. But Abby had seen some things too. So we shared some stories of her brothers, not of her. So that was comforting. But
oh, that's funny.
No, but that, I mean, how did you wrestle with that? Did you work through it as you're growing up going, well, I wish this relationship were different, but I'm not sure how to fix it? Or did you?
No, I remember vividly one turning point was your dad, my mom and I were going at it after a Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
And he said, that's it.
Yeah.
You will not act this way.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which honestly, looking back, and if we're trying to be a fly on the wall or letting those flies listen.
Yeah.
My dad probably should have been a stronger force.
Yeah.
To maybe rein my mom in a little bit and also kick me in the rear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he definitely could have had a stronger hand on me and it would have made a big difference.
Yeah. To let you go at it.
Right.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I think that's good of Dad. I mean, I know that probably there'll be some people are used to that. Some people are not used to it culturally, but I try to tell the young men in our church, obviously you're not trying to be heavy-handed, but somebody has to be the thermostat.
Right.
And that's what men need to be, a leader in that, and saying, the temperature is getting too hot.
Right.
Or it's cold right now. We need to take initiative, but be a thermostat. That's helpful to hear Dad doing that. I know it's tough.
Yeah, it was tough, but then it also made me aware of because you don't know how you're acting when you're in the moment.
And you've been doing it for years.
Right, and it's ingrained. So that was a good thing. And I think as I've totally, gone a lot of years, I realized, wow, that should have been done way earlier.
And how old were you when that happened, you think?
Oh, man, I bet I was, before that 29 mark.
But, okay.
Yeah.
So I was born, but maybe not like...
You probably were young enough that you weren't really you were probably off playing.
Well, yeah, no. I remember one time.
You remember?
I remember some Sundays, not with you and Grandma. Actually, I remember Uncle Grant and Dad discussing economics. They weren't discussing economics. They were like yelling about manufacturing going overseas and things. And it was fun to actually see. I think it was good for us to see real family because everybody obviously loved each other, spent so much time together.
Right.
Genuinely disagreed.
But really hashing things out too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, okay, so you're going... So why at 29, the last baby's born, there wasn't like a revelation with Derek? I know he might want to think that, but why did you turn to a mess instead of a hot mess?
I just think maturity.
Yeah.
You are maturing just from life circumstances.
You said on like earlier, like you found a little bit of a groove in being a wife and a mother. What do you think of with that?
I think it was more just, okay, trying to figure out what does it look like to be doing the things I'm supposed to be doing? Like, what am I supposed to be doing with these kids?
Yeah.
And when you really are grasping, okay, I'm supposed to be training them, do you remember me reading to you boys?
Reading
at night?
Yeah. I mean, well, you'd make up stories too, right?
Okay. Well, one time I said that I read to you guys at night all the time, and Daniel's like, you never read to us.
Oh,
and I'm
fine.
like, so you just wonder what your kids remember.
Yeah, I remember but not like I don't remember week upon week. I remember it like, yeah, you read to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'm
Well,
the oldest too.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know if it, did
Okay.
you do it all the way through?
Not in high school, but when they were little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even Derek and Dylan when they were little though?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you read to us?
I'd
Just
read
stories?
all kinds of stories and
Yeah.
then just chapter books too and
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. I have pictures of that, but Daniel,
Okay.
you
You probably had his head in a headlock or something.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure he'll watch this. So
Oh, that'd be
they will.
great.
Yes, but finding a grip on what am I supposed to be teaching them? What were the big rocks that once you had them in your hands, it made sense? Because I know what you mean when my life, especially up into seminary, you're like, okay, I need clarity because the big responsibilities and relationships are just not settled. I'm not pastoring at a church. I don't have children. Now marrying Abby set one clear, but once you get that clarity, what was the pieces that fit into the puzzle that helped you get clarity after 30? You feel?
I think probably just, okay, I know I'm to be a wife. I'm to be a child of God. I'm going to be a wife, a mother, an active church member, and then trying to look at all of those and go, okay, what am I doing in those areas?
And how did you start to determine that?
Basically, like with a wife, I was going through A Woman After God's Own Heart by Elizabeth George.
Okay.
And I felt like it was a great book to hit all areas of your life about being a wife.
Yeah.
And then looking at motherhood as like, I've got this much time left.
Yeah.
And trying to be purposeful about how will I give them little nuggets? How will I confront sinful actions with the right attitude?
Yeah.
Which I could go back and go, oh yeah, let me have a do-over. But
well, that's somebody asked if there was something you could do later, but let's come back to that. What would you do over? But so you were trying to work on what does it look like to be a mother, and that's where actually we can go to 46 to 60 later. But some people really wanted to know, okay, so in terms of raising boys or just raising children, I mean, what did you start to learn as you were pursuing understanding what God was calling you to?
I think I started to learn I need to be learning as much as I'm trying to train them. There was one journal that I started and said, what did I teach my sons about God today?
Oh, nice.
And so I started trying to write things down every day. And then you're doing that, you start realizing, well, I don't know that I did anything purposeful.
Yeah.
And that's where you get confronted every day. Like, what did I teach them today?
And do you still have that?
I don't. I ended up kind of like, because I had felt like I had kind of failed mostly.
Yeah.
But then it was always at the forefront of my mind. I really wish I would have kept it going.
Yeah.
Because I don't, I look back at it now and I'm like, I didn't really fail in that. I just was too critical.
Yeah. But that's a good idea. So that you were keeping that in front of you, and did anybody teach you about what you should be? I think sometimes people now, information age, they want like, well, okay, give me the definitive list of what I must cover.
Right.
How did you think? Okay, what should I be teaching the children?
Yeah, I don't think I did that.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah.
I think I love Proverbs.
Yeah. And
I basically tried to do that. Like, we had Bible time with the family in different ways, right? We learned catechism. Dad would read scripture after dinner or whatever. And then I tried to do the proverb that day and just kind of weaving that in with our lives.
Yeah. So
but I don't think I had a systematic.
Did you do you feel like there is a way that, because Abby seems to notice it in a way that I guess I kind of just lived with it, which was that you use scripture very on the front of your attention in talking to us.
Okay.
How did you have like I'm going to memorize some passages for them to your parenting, or did you just?
Every morning I'd get up, I'd read the proverb that day, and that would be supplementing my other reading, right?
Right.
And I'd try to write down one verse and put it on a card.
Yeah.
And then that way it would be like on the windowsill, it'd be wherever. I'd try to have, if I had a pocket, and
Keep
then
it with you.
just keeping it like in front of my mind, like, okay, so I can slip it in. Right?
And talk to the kids.
Right. Yeah, just looking.
So every day was fool uttereth all his mind. That was the proverb.
Isn't that always?
I thought was the only thing Proverbs said. A fool uttereth all his mind. In the multitude of words,
In
there
the
doth not
multitude of
lack
words.
sin. So those two proverbs were in every chapter? Is that what you're telling me?
Maybe not.
Okay, so maybe you
Maybe
memorized,
the card just got stuck
maybe
in
you
my
memorized
pocket.
those for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but were there other ways that you tried to intentionally get scripture on the attention of the boys?
I don't think so. I probably depended too much on Awana because you were working on those verses. I'd be quizzing you. Usually wasn't quizzing you because you knew them. But, like helping to, okay, let's get your verses done.
Right.
And then talking about what the meaning is, because that's my kind of pet peeve is that kids can rattle a verse, but they don't have any clue what it means.
Yeah.
So, I tried to draw out, okay, what is that saying? But
Yeah. No, but it's also a huge help to just say, okay, we've invested in the school, and the school is teaching them tons of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
We've invested in Awana, that's teaching them tons of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you have to, that's an extension of our efforts.
Yeah,
right?
it is. It is. I don't want to disparage it because that was great.
So what were some of the best parts of raising boys?
Oh, I loved boys because they were, like you can have a conflict, but then they're over it quickly. Where from my perspective, girls tend to hold on to things and it becomes a drama. And I couldn't, drama was not my thing. So I loved that. I loved that, like boys, there was no pretense. It was just like, you got what you got.
Yeah.
And I love the fun nature of boys. But now that I've seen really with my granddaughters, I'm like, they can be that way too. I think I just had actually a stereotype in my head.
Yeah.
I was afraid of girls.
Yeah. So because I don't have any teen girls yet, but I haven't found it to be that different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're different, but
Right.
it's not that complex. What when you have each of your children is different, what were some of the ways that you tried to, or maybe we could even ask, how did you learn over the course of parenting from 1 to 4? And what about ways that you just saw even the project didn't change, but the person was different? Those are two questions, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think because I was always just like bend over, let's be done with it.
Yeah.
And I think really 1 to 4, that's kind of what needs to be done. I'm sorry if that's busting somebody's
I meant
bubble.
numbers 1 to 4.
Oh, you meant 1 to 4. Okay. Like that.
Yeah. But
you
yes,
mean
yeah.
1 to 4 years.
Yeah. 1 to 4 years. Yeah. I'm okay. And you can talk about, I'm pro spanking. So.
Okay. And I know that at times the personality differences was probably neglected on my part because I wasn't into like, how are you feeling? And tell me why you did that. So that was probably a failure.
You think it was a failure?
Yeah, probably. Once you have your brother's phone in.
No, I mean, honestly, I would like to hear your perspective because I know that people in our day have perspectives, but I feel like I grew up in a wonderful home. So I wondered what you actually reflect on as, how would you improve if you went back? What do you think you'd do differently?
What would I do differently? Count to 10 before I ever started to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really know what I would do differently. That sounds so arrogant, but it's kind of like, you're in the moment of parenting. And I think now as a grandparent, maybe that's the way I can reference it, right?
Yeah.
I'm more patient. And that's a shocker, right? Because I always say I'm not the patient grandma. But I am more patient because I don't have the regular pressure and stress of being the mom.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not doing all of the mom things all the time.
Right.
Even if they're at my house for a week, it's a short time.
Right.
So I think that's the part where if I could go back, I would say you need to develop the fruit of the spirit of patience because you don't have it, girl.
Yeah. So that was the main thing you felt like was the main struggle in your parenting was patience?
Probably. Mm-hmm.
And normally how would that show up for you?
Bend over.
So you thought you thought you spanked too quickly?
Probably. I probably did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And too often?
Maybe not too often with you.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I know I got more spankings than
No,
all
you
the other
probably
brothers
did.
combined, but
it is one of those things.
I'm okay with it.
But that's where I don't want to do the the old lady thing where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have spanked or that whatever. No, I was supposed to because that was my responsibility at the time.
Right.
But I think if I was patient or more patient than I was, that would have probably, given a little bit more time for
Aiming.
There you go. You'd have still gotten the spanking,
Yes.
but it would have been right on the cheeks.
There you go. It would have been aiming would have helped. Yes. Dylan's old joke about anywhere from ankles to earlobes.
Ankles to ears. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what. But no, So, are there places where? Yeah. What about the different? You don't feel like you saw differences, or do you think you parented the younger boys different than the older ones by learning?
I think you do, but you don't really know how. Like I wouldn't be able to say,
Yeah.
oh, I handled Dylan and Derek differently this way.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just a little bit of wisdom that's come into your life.
Yeah.
A little bit of, you got distraction because there's two older ones being bigger buffoons than the little ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I actually think that's helpful for people to hear because I think people are searching for some clarity that might not be built into life.
Right.
That it's just more, you got to depend on the Lord and steward what you have.
Absolutely. And that's what I would do differently is I think I went in my own strength a lot. And if I could go back, that would be a place where I'd just be like, Lord, give me wisdom in this moment. Because I know I often just was like, no, I see what's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And were you and Dad pretty much the same in your parenting philosophy when you got married? Do you think?
Probably similar homesteads.
Yeah.
The parents were no nonsense. You're not going to get away with.
Because I know that some people deal
or-
with that as a part of their marriage.
Sure.
What was that? So if you and Dad had to get on the same page, what arena of life would it be in the early days, the hot mess days? It wasn't parenting.
Probably expectations of marriage.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, so like, you come in and you've been pursued, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're young and just the natural flow of a relationship. And then all of a sudden you're married and my husband's still pursuing seminary.
Yeah.
He's still got all those demands. And then you feel like, what am I supposed to be doing? I don't even know now. And the dynamic was different.
Yeah.
And so that was probably most of our struggle. First, I always say this to young couples. The first year and a half of our marriage, we almost killed each other.
Yeah.
So, that's just the reality of two very strong personalities mixing and then having their own selfish needs and desires that they want their own way.
Right. And you knew it was a problem?
Oh, we knew it was a problem.
Yeah. So how did you get out of it?
I think just growing up, part of it, I always say, when we had you, that was like, like a grow up moment for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the place where it was like, okay, you can't keep complaining that you're not getting the attention you need or want. And, he was like, okay, I've got to step up my game as being a husband, father.
Yeah. So, was there anybody were there any people who knew how much you guys were struggling?
No.
Because that was, I remember actually Bruce and Mary Compton were helpful for me because in seminary, Abby and I were, finding our feet as well. And to hear they had struggles and I'm sure somebody else will be encouraged by.
It's helpful because you don't want to be like, oh, we've got it all together. And somebody else is like hanging on by a thread.
Right.
And then they lose hope.
Yeah.
Because you think, I can't do that.
Right. And then was it a night and day change or it took a while to find the new footing?
A while to find the new footing.
How many years?
That's a good question. I don't know what he would say. Where would it be? Somewhere in those 40s, I think, was like, okay, this is the groove. I'm supposed to be, I'm supposed to be his helpmate.
Yeah.
Right? It says, and God saw that it was not good for the woman to be, or the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable to him. And all of a sudden it was like, I should have been really understanding that before. Because a lot of times I think I was thinking, well, he's supposed to be kind of like my helper.
Yeah.
And that was just, wrong thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's helpful. Because, I mean, honestly, I feel Abby and I are in a good stride right now, but it does take, there are windows where it takes real intentionality, and we're in year 15, right? And so if you're in your 40s, that's
year 20.
20. Yeah. So hopefully marriages are encouraged to think like, oh, looking back, somebody's not saying, oh, we found our groove right away.
Right.
To persevere and keep learning that. So,
yeah.
All right. So then I want to ask you, you're raising boys. Do you have any advice for the different phases of their children's ages? Any just quick advice? Parents of young children, what do you say?
Be consistent.
Be consistent? What do you mean?
Your yes should be yes and your no should be no.
Yeah.
Right? Don't be quick to just say no to everything, but your kid should not come back to you 3 times asking for the same thing.
Yeah.
Discipline immediately, because they're testing you, and they need to know there are boundaries. And you are their boundary right now.
Yeah. So then the next rung above that, parents of elementary children.
Just be a listener, be a good listener, and interact with them about what's going on. But one of the things your dad taught me was that I wasn't to pester you boys about what's going on and asking you a ton of questions.
Yeah.
Is to let you just flow it out. And that's why I always liked, like working jobs together. I know you guys didn't like my working jobs, but, you're kind of side by side.
Yeah.
Right? You're digging, you're doing whatever. And then to let conversation come out that way.
Right. So what about teenagers?
Teenagers, laugh with them and love them. And then also, I think the working side by side was a really good thing for us.
Yeah, so work was a big part of our life growing up. So do you have ways that you would tell people, how did you approach having your children work and teaching them to work?
Honestly, I didn't learn anything about money until you guys were like 9 and 11. And we were basically doing the paycheck to paycheck thing. And it was frustrating to me. And I was always frugal by nature. So I was like, you guys are going to learn how to work, and you're going to learn how to handle money. So that's when we started the paper routes.
You and Dad were paycheck to paycheck that long into it? Wow.
Yep. I mean, we were saving and things like that.
I know, yeah.
But still, it was like
tight.
And I felt the pressure, and it just wasn't a good dynamic. And then basically, once I kind of tried to train you boys on that system, it helped me.
Yeah.
Because I was learning as you were learning. And so I was becoming more disciplined, and then
And what system are you referring to?
So I used Money Doesn't Grow on Trees.
Yeah.
The book was by Neil Godfrey, and it basically had savings, offerings, and spending, SOS.
Yeah.
And it was just a great tool. Now, that was before Dave Ramsey, before Larry Burkett.
Yeah.
So it just was a way for me to okay, this is a tool I can use.
But it helped you get that stuff in order yourself.
Yeah. Oh,
I
for sure.
I didn't realize that ever till now, actually, because thankfully that's been a part of what we were trained in. So
right.
I'm not sure. I'm still inclined to be a spender, whereas you're more inclined to be frugal. I didn't realize.
I'm very frugal. Yeah.
Well, so am I if you say you never buy new clothes or something like that. But I also like to get food and things like that.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting my Diet Coke every day. So,
Right. So depends. So teaching about money and work, you did it by experience with us. Tell people what your memory of how you put us to work.
Okay, so we started with the paper routes, and then that expanded where we had a good amount. I think we were like 250 customers at one point.
Yeah, I think there were 13 paper routes, right? Or something like that. Sunday and Wednesday.
Right. So the philosophy behind that was we wanted you to learn to work, and then also things that wouldn't distract from ministry.
Yeah.
You could still do them, but do all of the things that we felt were most important with the church.
Right.
And then eventually started lawns.
Yep.
And the lawns were a way for you to earn money and still do ministry trips and opportunities, camps in the summer.
Right.
And also hard work, because lawns are not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah. So how did those ideas come to you?
Paper routes, because I had paper routes when I was a kid.
Okay.
And lawns, I don't really know. I think it just was somebody else probably did. I think maybe we got our first customer because Dobertans had, said, "Hey, can you mow this lawn? We're going to be done."
Yeah. And it was it a project you and Dad knew you were beginning, or more like just slowly trickled into your lives?
Yeah, it trickled in.
Okay.
I mean, I specifically started the paper routes to teach you about money.
Okay.
It wasn't really for this big college experience or whatever.
Right.
And then eventually when we're like, wow, we're doing good with saving and all that stuff.
Right.
Then the lawns, and it became a great tool.
Right. And what did you feel, what were the main challenges you had to teach in, where were the resistance points? What were the struggles or challenges you faced in teaching your boys to work?
Natural laziness of humans.
Yeah.
Not that you guys were lazy. It just, I don't feel like, doing all the stuff I supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and it became like a job for you.
Right. I was kind of a little manager.
Yeah. The lawn pimp. That's what we call her. Paper pimp and lawn pimp. So she would take us, drop us off wherever, execute our work, and then come back. So
there you go.
This is our church podcast.
Okay.
Don't worry. Nobody's gonna care.
Going to
They
jail.
have me as a pastor all the time. they know me in these ways. So what about when your children get older? What are some of the lessons you're learning or advice you'd give after high school?
Just to be hopefully praying for them and then encouraging them where you can try to offer encouragement of, places that you see them excelling, or offering hope and help, I think too, is a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you started to, you find your feet a little bit, right? You getting older. Now you said 45 to 60.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there's some water in there. We can go back to different things but it did make me think of, okay, also some of your children are starting to go out of your house.
Right.
And would you say that's when the ministry to other missionaries and elderly saints picked up, or no? Was it before that?
For sure picked up because I had more time on my hands. When I was going to turn 50, the year before I turned 50, I got a journal and I wrote, 365 days till I turned 50. And then I kept going down. And so I had a goal of every week to see a younger woman and every week to see an older woman.
Yeah.
And I tried to do that year, and I really learned a lot. I grew a lot. And I think that's where I've kind of like, okay, this is a good opportunity for me to see there are needs.
Right.
And I'm going to have more time on my hands to just start being able to fulfill those needs.
Right.
And then with the missionaries, that kind of came about by, the ease of communication, right? Email comes in that storm too.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to communicate with them. Now there's WhatsApp that's even easier, I think. But one missionary had said something about they sent out an email and nobody responded to them.
Yeah.
And I remember them sharing that story, and it was in a small setting. They weren't complaining. And they just said, it was like, I felt like, is anybody out there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember that day going, oh, there'll be somebody out there the next email you send.
Right. Right.
And that is my true heart of like, man, if they send out something, I'm going to communicate in some way. Right. It's usually short note.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to say, I see you.
Yeah. Right. So how do you think about it now? Is that a priority in your week that you go, oh, which missionary am I? Or
so
how do you approach it?
So when I make my pepperoni rolls, I have a prayer booklet.
Right.
And so I bring that out, and that's as I roll, I flip through that and pray for the missionaries.
Yeah.
When we get their emails, I update their things in my book and that kind of stuff. So that's my thought process there. And I try to communicate them every time an email is sent.
Yeah.
Some, like there's a few that we don't hear a whole lot from, and I just then say, I haven't heard from them. I'm going to send them a note.
Right. Right. Now, what about the that's far away. Now, what about elderly around here in the church?
Yeah, I try to, just visit. I don't know that I have a set. I've got actually a little project coming soon. I hope that will help me be more organized about it.
Yeah.
Because I think often somebody who's the squeaky wheel, that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they might have more issues.
Yeah.
They're the ones that get visited, called, or whatever. And
Right.
then there's some that are just frail and, can't
Quietly,
get out and quietly enduring, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where, so the caring for those. Now, I think that's actually a really, really great thing that I've seen in your life is sometimes, and I don't want to get into this all, but when people are talking about complementarianism and a man leading and a woman complementing and building this home together, it's really fascinating for me how much when I got out of our area or out exposed to more views, how many people thought of the homemaker role as so empty.
Oh, okay.
And you had been with building these companies, with the paper outs and lawns and visiting these elderly and a lot of things. I was like, well, this is an incredible field of work where you have to have tons of competence. But I think it was partly because you approached it maybe more in line with the biblical vision of a homestead and generational overlap and caring for elderly. And so, and you still get to. That's what's interesting is your career isn't over in homemaking. It's just shifted more to the biblical categories of like the infirm and the widow instead of children.
Right.
And that is, so you still have a part of your career, so to speak, that is this calling, which is, I'm excited to see what you do on that. But how do you approach it now? Like you don't have, let's say you don't have a big organized thing, but what do you do for the older ladies in the church or try to do just as a disciple? I'm not saying this is the official inner city widow care plan or something. What is your
my
desire?
goal?
Yeah. What are you trying to do? Yeah.
So like I really try to make sure that they're, connected, I guess, to the body.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll take them one of the monthly or the quarterly prayer booklets. I'll take them a prayer sheet. I always pray with them when I go to their visits.
Yeah.
I used to always sing with them.
Right.
But my voice has gotten really shaky. It's not like it was great before, but it's just like there's a point and I'm like, I don't think I can do that anymore. Because a lot of times they're missing that.
And you go alone?
I usually do.
Yep.
Which is something I probably should have done better about bringing people with me. But, I kind of go in my own time frame. Yeah. I try to order my life around Dad and whatever his schedule needs are. And then I just, I'm going to go see her today.
Right. And that doesn't feel the same as the extrovert stuff, right? Because in your mind?
It doesn't.
Right. Because me too. I understand. It's just somebody you get blessed by serving them.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how often are you doing that, you think?
Every week I see somebody at least once.
Yeah. And are there other ladies in the church doing that kind of thing who are in your season of life?
Maybe older than me, they are.
Yeah. Because it doesn't seem like that needs to be a pastor's, that doesn't seem like that needs to be a spiritual discipline for pastors' wives. It could just be older ladies doing that. Or people without children at home.
Right. And honestly, it could be people with children in the home.
Yeah.
Right? Because I look back and go, that's probably a place I could have been better. I don't remember if I did this with you, but we did Meals on Wheels for a while.
Yeah, I remember.
Do you remember doing that? Okay.
Yeah.
So honestly, it was just
Made
a place.
An impression.
You never want to eat one of those meals.
No, it wasn't the meals. I was always thinking like we were walking up to give a zombie a meal, like some old person that looked like they were about to die. So in a good way, now I'm a pastor. I love hospital visits and these things, and I know how sacred it is. But I remember as a kid being like, why are we going to the Halloween store with a meal?
I'm so sorry. But I think now I look back and I go, I should have been taking you boys to see like an older woman in our church.
Yeah.
Not that that was wrong. It just, I didn't know what,
I get it.
It was kind of like I was trying to teach you a way to serve.
Yeah.
And to, not be afraid of the zombie.
Yeah. No, it was good. I mean, I definitely am more comfortable with it. We try to take our kids into some of those things.
Yeah.
Our church we don't have a super old crew of ladies.
Sure.
We have a crew of older ladies that are nice. But like Abby got to have breakfast with Miss Norma, shout out. I doubt she's watching this, but she's 90.
Well,
And they had breakfast yesterday. And yeah, it's a great habit. It's really, it's something that's beautiful because I mean, I in some ways I will miss that opportunity for her when she goes to teach, but I know she's going to keep investing in kids in that way. So
sure, right.
it'll be a good window.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about, okay, you're an older woman,
Mm-hmm.
and this is Mother's Day, but we're just kind of talking about all kinds. You're an older woman, and you're now embracing the older woman role in Titus 2.
Mm-hmm.
Are there concerns that you really would love to share, just generally observations you're noticing for younger women? Encouragements and concerns.
Right.
Let's say that. Both.
And encouragement is, I remember the older ladies telling me that, oh, time will go so fast.
Yeah.
And you in your head know, yeah, that's true. But you really don't get it until you're older. And that's why all the older ladies say that to you, right? So remember that your days are like a vapor completely.
Right.
So from beginning to end, whatever you get, it's quick.
Yeah.
So take serious the task that God has given you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that every day is, a sun up to sundown prayer meeting.
Right.
But at the same time, guard your time. Don't let it be eaten away by things that don't matter.
Right.
And for me, it would have been television, which was back in the day when there wasn't, things that it was basically to record it on a VHS tape if you wanted to watch something. So you don't want to waste your time on that stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And for the generation now, it's their phones.
Right.
So guard your time. And I know they can be great tools, but I see a lot of just kids that are put on a phone and parents that are on their own phone. And it's just not a good thing.
Yeah, that's definitely not embraced. No wonder the calling to homemaker seems lame if you're basically just saying, well, do I have to sit next to this person on their phone?
Right.
Instead of parenting them or whatever.
Right.
What about, are there concerns are there concerns you see beyond the let's say the phone threat, the distraction threat?
I think if we're talking to wives and mothers, I would say the idea of who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Because you are created uniquely to be the helper for your husband. That's what it says in Genesis 2:18.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, what I've seen is that it's almost like hey, we're side by side, we're partners, we're 50-50. And really, it's like, no, you're 100-100.
Yeah.
And he's got the design to go and take care of what God has called him to. And you're supposed to be supporting and helping that.
Yeah.
And that looks differently for many people.
Yeah. Yeah. So different dispositions, backgrounds, because it is. So what are some telltale signs in your mind of the difference between 50-50 and 100-100?
I would say 50-50 means I give all that I'm supposed to give every day.
So 100-100 does.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
100-100 does. And he should be doing that too.
Yeah.
Right. Because when we do the 50-50, it's like,
meet me halfway.
I'm keeping track.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start keeping track, you're in a train wreck.
Yeah.
You can never keep track because he's got a different scale that he's keeping track with. Right. Your 50 is his 20.
Right.
And vice versa. And then you're like, okay, nobody's got anything.
Right.
And you should all be stepping up to fill the gaps wherever possible.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, it's 100-100.
Yeah. So we're pursuing that with the Spirit. And you're saying, hey, pour yourself into your calling.
Right.
And let them pour in themselves into their calling.
Right.
And as you look back, because I mean, that is, it's encouraging here because you and I wonder, I guess Abby we both must be more extroverted than you and Dad.
Probably.
Because we do both incline to have people over.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you host a ton. So that's where, that's interesting to think about. It doesn't have to be disposition.
No.
Because I think you and Dad accomplish more than we do in that sense of but you're also more introverted.
Right.
Interesting. And more, how do you and Dad make sure that ministry is inappropriate? You know that I'm not a work-life balance person in terms of the way people manipulate it now to be selfish. But how do you guys keep the check engine lights available for your own marriage and for your life?
I think we've got a good flow for that because it's just so many years of what we've been doing, right? So, and we live close to the church.
Yeah.
That's such a benefit for us.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're just able to kind of know each other, and like, this is going to sound, I don't know how it'll sound, so I'm just going to say it.
Whatever.
I don't feel like I'm a needy person.
Yeah.
Like if I really enjoy going out and gardening and just being out there for a couple hours, it's fine for him to be golfing or doing something else.
Right.
And then we'll go for a bike ride another day.
Right.
And that's not, I don't feel like I have to have a certain amount of time.
Yes. Well, that's, I think, the place where we learning your own spouse, because you guys are both refreshed by doing something you each enjoy separately and not thinking like, well, but we weren't together or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, that's good. So as you get into this, one thing I didn't want to pass by is you did go through. So how old were you when you had the car accident?
At 40.
40. Okay. So were there, that was obviously an abrupt challenge. Derek is how old?
I think he was 4th grade.
4th grade. So you're not out of all the phases. I really wish I'd been more. I mean, I was a senior, so I was kind of out quick right after that. I wish I'd been more helpful. So do you wish that too? Do you remember?
I just remember you teasing me about you'd come home and I'd have my foot on the back of the couch with an ice pack and Diet Coke, 2-liter in my hand, and a box of Cheez-Its. So,
well, see, the funny thing is I remember things like that, but I didn't remember connect it to the accident. I was just thinking,
you thought that was just life,
just like bonbon time or whatever. But that is, so you were in a car accident. You want to tell them what happened?
Yeah, I was driving down Allen Road and somebody should not have turned on in a turn lane. They turned in front of me and I never saw them. There was a car in front of them that really cut it close, and then this guy followed. So just blindsided me and took the front panel of my car, broke my right leg. It was kind of dangling off. Had to have surgery and plates and screws. And then the left leg was, PCL was torn. And so I was in a wheelchair for 8 weeks and basically moved down. We don't have, we have a colonial, so there's no bathroom on the main floor. So my husband would take me up to his office and I'd get a shower there. And
so
it was interesting.
So, I mean, and then your ankle was a lot worse than it is right now, it seems, for a long time. I mean, obviously it goes through ebbs and flows, but what did you learn through that process of being injured and still all doing all these things?
Yeah, that was a challenge because I remember a year out, they had told me after all my therapy, what you have at a year is what you'll keep. And I was distraught because it was every painful step was awful. Yeah. But that truly wasn't true because then, I went through more therapy later and thankfully the Lord gave me a lot of relief with my leg.
Yeah. And you did you find yourself, because I found that you were also very, was that impactful for the way you cared for like Grandpa Doran or others? Because I found that one of the testimonies that you have of caring for great Grandma Tally, well, now Grandma Tally, I don't know what my kids call her, but so Grandma and Grandpa, both you spent a lot of time caring for them. Those were after the accident, right? Both of them?
Right.
So was that, did you remember being laid up for long? Did that impact the way you cared for them or no? It wasn't really connected?
It might have been connected that I don't really realize. But I think once you've been completely immobile, then you realize how much it helps to have people that are there to help you.
So I mean, that's one thing I wanted to ask about was, okay, so I watched you very diligently care for 2 aging and then passing parents. What were lessons that you learned in that?
With Grandpa Doran, because of his, dementia, it was just challenging there because you're seeing that. Is that what you meant? You meant Grandpa Doran, right? Yeah,
Grandpa Doran, yeah.
And just more being a support to Grandma, who was bearing the brunt. Yeah. And that was what we tried to do for her. With my mom, well, Grandma Sanders, she was failing, but
Yeah.
she wasn't really,
In need of care.
in need of care. We used to work on her back for her.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think that was part of it. And I loved my grandma. She was fabulous. Like, kind of like the best. But I saw at 90 where she started to get a little bit, she was in so much pain
Yeah.
that it really was affecting her spirit.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I don't want to let that happen. I got to guard my heart against that.
Right.
And I would encourage her and challenge her and sometimes yell at her, but
Yeah.
And with my mom, the struggle was so much longer. Being very sensitive to the frustration she was feeling.
Yeah.
To be, have somebody who has exercised faithfully.
Yeah.
To have their mobility taken away like it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And trying to look at it as my job is to encourage and help her.
Yeah. So encourage was your main.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And
any advice for? So I think a good portion of our church mostly will be facing those things, caring for aging parents in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any advice you'd have for them to prepare themselves?
I think for themselves, just to make sure they have their spiritual life in order, because that is where, in the moment of trial, you need to be the one who can speak truth.
Yeah.
The one who can just give a hug and not say anything.
Yeah.
And then also be able to write a note or something that offers them hope.
Yeah.
Because even though, like I would have looked at my mom and said her faith was very strong, you still need to be reminded of those truths that you're trusting in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to day by day forget or just be discouraged.
Oh, for sure.
Just need to encourage one another with these words, right?
Yep.
See to it today that none of you is hardened by sin's deceitfulness.
Yep.
Okay, I don't know. I'll ask. I have other questions. Was there anything that you wanted to make sure you said either to our church or anything about parenting that or mothering or being a wife that we didn't cover?
I don't think so.
Because I think it's fascinating, but I also
I can't think of anything. So
yeah. The when you look ahead now, okay, so you're 60 and maybe you'll have one day. And then this will be what an epic release if you're dead, right?
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be better than me getting
Nobody understands when I make these jokes. They're like, "Oh, that's morbid." I'm like, "Well, honestly, it'd be awesome to be done." So
praise God.
But what are you aspiring towards or praying towards with the next season?
So, I wanted to get a clock that counted down the days till I turned 70.
Mm-hmm.
And I just haven't been able to figure out quite the one that I could get. But I truly look at it like 70. So
Yeah.
I've got 10 years. I'm on a countdown clock.
Right.
Because if I make it to 70, then after that, it's overtime.
Yeah.
And, my family heritage, I probably will, unless there's something catastrophic that comes tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I want to be looking at it as I want to finish well.
Yeah.
Right? My husband will often say, we're in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And nobody, we remember the Titans, right? We watched that a million times. Fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Like, don't get lazy. I don't have the strength and energy I used to. But you know what? I've got a little bit of wisdom and I've got the time on my hands.
Yeah.
So I should be pouring in different ways.
Right. Yeah. And are there, let's say you don't know how long you have.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think, but are there particular things that you're hoping to pour into your local church because of these next 10 years? Anything in particular you're?
I'm trying to look at it as training for the next pastor, right? So that
what do you mean by that?
Like he comes in and he's got this army of people that are a powerhouse of service.
Yeah.
Which, saying that about, I think our church is that right now.
Yeah, I was actually thinking,
right?
Oh, that's great. It's because that could even only get better. But
right,
yeah.
Right. I mean, if they're already there, but right, like some of those that are already there are the 50s.
Yeah.
Some are in the 40s and 30s, but, so I want to make sure those ones that are younger are really girding up for service.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of thing that you can encourage and foster as you just hopefully bring them along with you, by example, by teaching.
Yeah. If I'm sure somebody's going to watch this from inner city. So if some mom says, "Oh, well, I want to tag along to visit an old lady,"
I'd love
can
it.
they text you?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well,
Right.
how do they get your number? Just ask you at church
Yeah.
rather than put it on the Ethernet for.
Everybody has my number.
Yeah.
You can look it up.
Yeah. So no, I just wanted to, so people could start learning by example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Um,
Matter of fact, I have something coming that
there you go.
should be mentoring. It should be pulling them in to do that.
Well, pitch it to us a little bit.
Well, I'm hopefully going to have a program. It's called Women of Excellence, and it will be specifically targeting visiting and training people to do visitation.
Yeah. And how have you thought about, do you have it formed yet? For the most part?
Yeah, for the most part. So
See, that's where I think you and Dad are different, and I'm more like Dad, is you probably have it planned out. Dad and I, if you have a name, we're ready to move.
right.
Kind of.
I know.
Right?
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
know.
well, we'll figure it out on
Shoot
the
fire
drive there.
dis-
and
Yeah.
so you have it already planned.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so what will involve?
Basically, I think if I could go back in time when I made any of those visits when I was going to turn 50, right?
Yeah.
I would have asked for their testimony. Said, tell me how you came to Christ.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a place where it hopefully will be something they'd want to share.
Yeah.
And then hopefully would be a place where then you get to know them better
Right.
because you've had that interaction.
Right.
And so that's part of it. I would have a lady share their testimony. I might share mine.
Yeah.
Or I might share mine first, whatever. And then to be able to develop on that relationship that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That'll be great. Do you have any reflections on, there were some people who asked, and I don't know if this will, we'll see if we keep people this long, but so obviously I think our relationship's wonderful. It was not always intensely joyful.
Right.
It was
we
more
had some
just
challenges.
intense.
Yeah.
So how did you go through those windows? Reflecting on a child that's giving you lots of challenges, since I know I have, and I can be that child without hearing it being insecure.
Right. So I think your dad was really good about, he was constantly reminding me, big picture, you want to get their heart, not just make them do right. And so, because a lot of times I was just like, do the right thing.
Yeah.
And he was always reminding me, eventually it has to be the relationship that is still there, and then their relationship with God that will ultimately change their actions, their hearts.
Right.
So, that was a good buffer for me to remind me that, when those challenges are there. Daniel told this funny story. I mean, he doesn't even remember telling me it, but he's reading the book about Dale Carnegie and how to win friends and influence people.
Yeah.
And he said, Mom, if you had read this when David was in high school, I think we wouldn't have had so many fights. And I was like, that's probably very true.
That's funny.
Right? So
Yeah.
I do think there's a part of just like, learning how to
Yeah.
get along with
But there's
others.
also something to be said for the fact that he didn't say when I was in high school. It was just that that you and I weren't getting along.
Right.
But, yeah. So strategy. For the sake of our church, is there any quintessential story about me that you want them to know? You don't have to.
No, I don't have any.
I had someone text me that, and I was like, I don't know if I want to ask that, but
Yeah, no.
I know
He was a great kid.
you can't say that with a straight face.
No, I can.
Yeah.
You were, but it's just one of those things where we were just like constantly like junior hires together. And I think that's kind of what the problem was.
Yeah.
It was like,
Oil and water.
yeah, oil and vinegar.
Yeah. Cats and dogs. I don't have bad memories of it. That's the thing that I think
Right.
is fascinating.
Which is great. I'm
I don't
thankful
have
for that.
I can remember many scenes of Dad coming home through the bay window and thinking
oh
like,
no.
if I swore back then, I would have swore, thinking I'm gonna die. And now
sorry.
that's what it was I was fighting with you. And if you hadn't, I try to encourage Abby, like the kids aren't at that age but they can be tiring. And if you hadn't persevered in keeping the heat on, and if you'd yielded to me,
Right.
I would have self-destructed.
Right.
I think so.
And that's partly because I saw, like, we're a lot alike.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw myself as
Yeah.
a teenager going, she needed a stronger hand.
Okay.
And so you probably got the brunt of me going, I needed a stronger hand. So you're getting it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I didn't even really think about that. I kind of assumed Papa and Grandma were strong on you.
My mom probably was, but my dad wasn't.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it was great. And you know, now as a season, okay, with grandchildren and any advice to there is a segment of our church that's grandparents and trying to do that. Any advice to them? Or just not that you've done it successfully, right?
Right, right. Yeah, they're little still.
But just advice of how are you thinking about it?
I'm looking at it purposely.
Yeah.
In Psalm 92, when it talks about, oh God, do not forsake me until I don't have it in front of me, but told this generation
Yeah.
about the truths that I trust in.
Yeah.
And that is my goal as a grandma, is like, that's what I want to communicate to them.
Yeah.
So I want to have fun and do all kinds of goofy things, but I also want them to know, if somebody said, well, tell me about your grandma, like, I hope that they'd say she loved Jesus.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's where, I can maybe end with this, is just we were at the dinner table the other day and I was trying to tell the kids, explain the idea of the word admire. What do you admire? And then say, okay, so who do you admire?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, well, it's encouraging. Abby and Charlie said you.
Oh,
so
that's sweet.
yeah, they both admire you, and we asked why, and they actually, I think Charlie said grandpa and grandma. So
I love that.
yes, and it's a good gift to have grandparents like that. Now, maybe we'll end, but my ADD does want to ask this. Okay, so we both experience the goodness of recurring family get-togethers, but they take a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So how do you, now that you're kind of, the matriarch, Grandma Sanders did that.
Yeah.
She said, you kind of have to be here.
Right.
How do you approach, like, trying to make sure, because somebody has to make sure the extended family sees each other.
Right.
Do you feel like that's a part of your stewardship, or how do you think about that at all?
I do. I think I haven't been as good about it because of some of the recent changes.
Yeah.
But, I think we had tried to do, like, first Sunday was going to be our meal day.
Yeah.
But that kind of fell off. But it's like, I kind of was like, I just have to get it back on the schedule and do it again.
Yeah.
Because it is important. And I think you get times like I love that Judah wants to sit at the table and hear adult talk. And Lucy was commenting on that Easter Day. And I just thought, there's enough holidays. Yeah, that's great. But then I think that natural once a month thing would be an important thing to reinstate.
Yeah.
And just make sure I do it.
Yeah. And I think we all enjoy it. We do end up seeing each other a lot and have a good family rhythm. But I think even the reflecting, as I've talked to other people, and it does seem very interesting to have watched the way that in different expressions, Grandpa Doran, basically Florida had been kind of like, you're going to get time together.
Right.
And then Papa and Grandma and Grandma Sanders, it was more like the Sunday by Sunday, you're going to get time with all your cousins.
Right.
And now we have this very large web of really meaningful relationships with family members.
Yeah.
That and aunts and uncles and things that are really helpful. I think the fascinating thing for me is now the studies and people are starting to recognize, like, oh, a singular nuclear family really is presented with a lot of challenges in the modern era.
Yeah.
And I never grew up with a singular nuclear family. It was like, well, I have so many cousins that are almost like brothers and sisters.
Right.
And so many aunts and uncles and so many. So it is good for us to, I just wondered if you were thinking about that consciously as something to pass on.
Yeah, I have been, because it's one of those places where you're like, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Somebody has to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it doesn't get done.
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate that about, you're very intentional about even the bringing us together in different times when you have something to share. So can you maybe tell us, when do you try, how do you think through when to speak up to children who are trying to make their own life as adults?
I think you should make sure you're really praying about something before you feel like you need to speak up. because it's too easy for us in our culture, but even just human nature, to like spout off what we think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the place where you have to be careful, because you don't want to come across as a know-it-all, or, I see your faults, right? It's easy to see anybody's faults.
Yeah.
So really pray about it, and then ask the Lord to give you opportunity, because that's where I've had the most, I think, the most success on things that I've wanted to say is like, for it to be opened up in conversation and then be able to say something.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, I think this will be helpful for people. And
I hope so.
I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah,
So,
it was great.
all right. That's it, guys.